Days 14 and 15, Ohio and Indiana. So these days were kind of garbled because I was dealing with a double whammy of a heat wave and severe weather. I started off in a town of Lockport, New York, and I completely didn't realize that you cannot travel by water between the Great Lakes and the Hudson because you have Niagara Falls in between. So 200 years ago, they dug a 350-mile canal called the Erie Canal that connects Lake Erie to the Hudson. Now it's not really in that much use. There are some private boats that go through it. So it was interesting to have a little tour of the canal and the locks and the tunnels under it. And then I continued on along the shores of Lake Erie. And there I went to this very cute historical lighthouse called the Marblehead Lighthouse with a very nice climb up to the top and the view of the lakes. And it was hot and humid and at the same time drizzling the whole day. But I still managed my mandatory dip in the lake, although the beach was very sandy, so I couldn't find any rocks. And that night I had one of the scarier experiences of my trip. So I'm in a Walmart parking lot in Port Clinton, Ohio. And in the middle of the night, I wake up because my car is being picked up and slammed back on the ground by wind. So I try to go online to see if there's like a tornado warning or anything. And effing AT&T, I have 5 bars of signal and no service. So I turn on the radio and they have severe weather warnings, but they're not talking about tornadoes. And I peek out the window and there are a couple of other RVs and vans around me and nobody seems to be scrambling for their lives. So I'm like, okay, fine. If I need to be Dorothy, I'm just gonna end up somewhere unplanned. So that was not a pleasant experience. And then the next morning driving on the interstate, the sky is literally black because of the storm clouds brewing. And the wind is so strong that these huge 18-wheelers are literally teetering from side to side. And I'm driving behind them and thinking, is it going to flip? Is it not going to flip? So at some point, I just pulled out into the rest stop for a couple of hours to wait out the worst of the storm. And I ended up in Indiana Dunes National Park. And that night was the absolute worst. I had the fan going the whole time. I still could barely breathe. I don't know what kind of devil spawn bit my legs, but I was in absolute agony. And it kept on flaring up for months afterwards. And I would start scratching myself raw. So the next morning, I went to Lake Michigan. And because the storm was still brewing, the park rangers were kicking everybody out of the water. I couldn't even get a swim. And I said, screw it, I can't deal with this anymore. And I just bolted out of there, back east and north up the Michigan Peninsula. So I begged forgiveness from the good people of the state of Indiana, but I did not like it at all. And in the evening, I ended up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I went to this coolest place called Rocky's Bar and Grill. And they have live music and stand-up comedy. And it was just my luck that night they had both. So it was very nice. And there I got to talk to 2 guys who turned out to be in their 70s. And they don't look a year over 50 with full heads of gray hair and big bulging muscles. And they were trying to convince me to go clubbing with them. And I said, are you crazy? I'm beat. I'm going to sleep. And all 3 of us walk out of the pub. And I go to my car and they get on these huge Harley Davidson bikes and drive off. And I'm looking after that and I'm thinking, I will sell my soul to the devil to be like that at 70 or even at 60 or even at 50, hell, even at 40.